Good morning. We're in the greenhouse, and I wanted to do a February update about some of the things that are going on. We've had really cold weather, and so it's been freezing inside this greenhouse every night for a couple of maybe 2 months. So, I mean, I've had a few nights where it didn't really freeze, but we've had a lot of frost, and one way I know is because of the ice on the water. So here's some compost extract I made, and you can see that it has a lot of ice in it. Let me just show you. So the ice outside is everywhere because it's snowy and all that. So we have, let's just see. Yeah, so that's about a half an inch of ice on top of that water. So it's getting pretty cold in here at night. It's getting in the 20s, the high 20s. I've come out a couple of times and looked at the temperatures. It's in the high 20s at night. Now, this could be considered negative. I see it as kind of a positive because we've had a lot of single digits. I mean, just days ago, like what, a week ago? We had 14 below zero. So, but our lows outside right now have been in the single digits for weeks. 8, 9 degrees. We've had a couple of warmer nights of 12 and 14. But inside the greenhouse, we still have a lot of plant growth. And I just wanted to point that out. So with a greenhouse where you have no supplemental heat, we can still produce a lot of food. So under the row cover over here, we're still eating celery, parsley, the Napa cabbage. And the Napa cabbage didn't really make very good heads, but those green leaves are great. We can pick those off and chop them up, and they're making a really good salad green at this time of year. And then over underneath the floating row cover over, obviously you can't see it through the cover, but there's a lettuce in there that we're picking, and we're picking them like baby leaf size. And the alfalfa, that we did a video on the alfalfa a few weeks ago. I haven't picked this yet, but it's interesting because there's no frost damage on that at all, being right against that stone wall. So maybe that stone wall isn't hardly freezing. I do have a couple of light bulbs in there, so it's keeping it pretty warm, which is great. Now I have a couple of volunteer lettuce plants here. These 3 lettuce plants right here are just volunteer, meaning that I didn't plant them. They just, seeds just fell in for whatever reason. But they're beautiful. I mean, look at those nice big leaves. So we could come in here. I'll just put my fingers down here so you can kind of see the size of that. So we could pick 3 or 4 leaves off of this one. So if we had a whole greenhouse full of that, or a whole bed of that, that's a lot of salad that we're producing at this time of year. And so it's getting cold enough in here to freeze a half an inch of water on the top of those buckets. But yet the lettuce is still growing really good. And this is not growing under a floating row cover. So what is growing under the floating row cover over here has more protection. And so we're able to produce a little bit more food that way. So that's great. Of course, we're still eating a lot of carrots at this time of year. I have not harvested half my carrot row yet. So there's 3 rows in this bed, and I've harvested 1/3 of it so far. So we still have a lot of those guys. And see all the lettuce here that we transplanted recently? This has not been picked yet. And then the shallot greens make a wonderful green onion. So I just come in here and pick off the biggest leaves. And so those are pretty fantastic. I was hoping and thinking that the Claytonia would be ready to eat yet, but I haven't harvested any. I guess it wants a little bit warmer weather. We'll go look at that in a second. But we've been eating beets. Right here, there were a bunch of beets in here. You can kind of see the red leaves that are left over. So we've been eating those. And I still have more beets scattered throughout the garden. There's some back over this way. So our beet crop is almost done. We've almost eaten them all. I think I probably only have 10 or 15 more beets. And we have new beet plants planted that are coming up, that are under the floating row cover. But we are going to have a break in the roots of the beets for a while. So here's more lettuce that I planted just very recently. And I want to show you the Claytonia coming up in the pot over here. So this is kind of an update on the Claytonia, because I've already showed you this pot in recent videos. But it's not much different. It's been well over a month, maybe close to 8 weeks, which is obviously 2 months, since we talked about these sprouting and coming up. But they're just barely now, a few of them, like this leaf here. I'll pick that off. I'll put it in my hand just to show how big it is. But that one there is about big enough to eat now. But all I have that's that large is what's in this pot. So we can just eat that. And that's pretty awesome. But we have, oh, that's sweet and good. But there's baby Claytonia coming up back there. There's a bunch in this wall that's coming up back here behind my perennial onions. So it is coming up all over. Here's a whole bunch coming up right here in this stone, right in the rock. So it is coming up. So that is food that's coming on soon. We just need warmer weather. I cleared out all the old dead foliage from the kale, and we are picking this kale now as it grows, and it grows pretty slow. Takes about 3 weeks to grow a leaf big enough to pick. So if we look at this one here, so this one is ready to harvest. That one leaf, this leaf. Of course, you can pick any of them. I just kind of like to pick them at that size. So if I needed to harvest right now, I would pick those 3. That'd be gone. And I would pick these 2. They would be gone. I don't want to harvest them today, so I'll just show you. So after I get done harvesting, that's what it's going to look like. So if I harvested those, there's 4 on this one to harvest. There's 2 right there. There's probably 3 or 4 there, 3 or 4 there, 3 or 4 there. So if I came in and picked all these off, we'd have a big bunch of kale to eat. But then it would be about 4 weeks at this time of year before they're ready to pick again, before these smaller leaves that I'm going to leave on there have grown to a harvestable size. So we are eating kale right now. And here's another alfalfa plant. And I've been picking this one throughout the winter, and I'm really surprised at how quickly this is growing back. Because I picked this right before boot camp. And so this is about 3 to 4 weeks of growth from being cut down. So the alfalfa is growing back very quickly, which is awesome. The strawberries, I have not even uncovered those strawberries all winter, so I don't really know what's going on under there, but I'm not worried about it. I don't need to know. We still have these broccoli heads that could be picked. A little bit of a dark spot here, which shows where there's some frost damage. See, it's kind of coming apart right there. But I've been leaving this here just to see what it would do throughout the winter. And what it's showing me is that we can have broccoli throughout the winter. I think we would probably need to cover it with a little bit better. Like this one's been uncovered for a week. I pulled this off and I didn't even cover it back up. So here's the one that is covered up. And because it's covered so much, there's mold growing on it right here. So and it's slimy and nasty, it's starting to decompose. So that's happening because there's not airflow. Anytime you get molds and rots, they're usually growing because there's not airflow. So it can be tricky to keep this stuff going through the winter. But there are good pieces on here. This one's fresh and nice and good. We could pick that off. So if we had 20 or 30 of these plants, we could get quite a few of these guys. I'm going to go ahead and pick that one right now just to show you. So this one's healthy, beautiful, and, you know, if we had 30 plants, we could probably pick 2 of these off of each plant and have 60 of those. That'd make several good meals of broccoli. Making good food at this time of year. I'm walking right here where we've been harvesting carrots, and I'm not replanting this right now because the onions will be going in here. So I just need to wait until the onions are ready. Let's take a look at this cabbage and see what's happening with this cabbage. See all this slimy death that's down under here. So this is early Jersey Wakefield, and it's not doing very good in the wet, cold, freezing nights every single night. And so if we were going to try to grow cabbage throughout the year and keep them in here in the winter, we would need different variety or different conditions. But this, I think that's my only cabbage in here. I may have one more. And the only reason I left them there is to see how they would winter in here. And it's wintering about like I thought, which is not very good. So that is our update for for February 2023, what's happening in the greenhouse. And there's a lot of good things happening, but I certainly wanted to show you some of the experiments I'm doing with the broccoli and the cabbage. And because it's important to know, you know, because if we thought, oh, the cabbage will hold all winter, and then we had 50 or 100 of those in here, and then they all went slimy like that, that'd be sad, because now it's basically just worm food. The other thing is that we could do, and I will probably do this later, is we will cut that cabbage out in another month or so, and we will see if it's good and green on the inside. The cabbage was not a head. It started heading during the winter, so it wasn't already a solid head. And that is the key to having good produce, is you want it to be matured before your real cold weather hits. So for in this greenhouse, the super cold weather hits here, usually in December, January. This year, we had 20 below zero in November. So this was an early winter, and it was a long winter that we've had here. So hopefully this helps you to have the most fantastic rotten cabbage you can have in your own garden. That wasn't the point of this. Hopefully this helps you have the best garden of your life.